The coffee had long gone cold, a forgotten casualty in Dr. Kaelen Voss's nightly duel with the universe. Surrounded by the gentle hum of servers and the soft glow of a dozen monitors, the Etheria Deep Scan Array was his sanctuary, perched on a remote Chilean mountaintop, far from city lights and earthly noise. Here, humanity listened, sifting through the cosmic whispers for anything more than background radiation. Tonight, something had shouted back. Kaelen leaned closer to the primary spectral analysis screen, his brow furrowed. An energy signature, sharp and impossibly focused, had spiked less than an hour ago. Not a gamma-ray burst, too controlled. Not a distant supernova, too close. Its vector was inbound, decelerating at a rate that defied known physics, or at least any physics humans had mastered. "Run diagnostics again, ADA," he murmured to the array's AI assistant, his voice raspy. "Diagnostics complete, Dr. Voss. All systems nominal. The anomaly remains consistent with previous readings." ADA's calm, synthesized voice replied, a stark contrast to the frantic thumping in Kaelen's chest. He ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. This wasn't a glitch. This was something else, something big. He pulled up the trajectory projection. The object, whatever it was, wasn't just passing through. It was making a beeline for the inner solar system. For Earth. Panic, cold, and sharp, pricked at the edges of his scientific detachment. He triple-checked the calculations. There was no mistake. His fingers flew across the console, initiating a priority alert sequence that hadn't been triggered in the Etheria Array's 20-year history. Far beyond Pluto's orbit, aboard the Xylosian vessel Void Chaser, Praetor Roken watched the mottled, blue sphere of Neptune recede on his command view screen. His multifaceted eyes, usually gleaming with confident authority, held a flicker of something akin to grim determination. Around him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their slender, gray-skinned bodies moving with practiced grace. Status report, navigations. Roken's voice, a series of resonant clicks and smooth, sibilant tones, cut through the low thrum of the engines. "Praetor, we are maintaining deceleration curve," the navigator replied. "Entry into the target system's primary habitable zone in 3 standard cycles. Energy readings tactical. The system exhibits unusually high levels of primitive electromagnetic radiation, Praetor, consistent with a pre-FTL civilization, type 0 on the Kardashev scale. No detectable advanced defensive grid." Roken's jaw tightened. A pre-FTL civilization, barely spacefaring. It made their mission both simpler and, in a way, more distasteful. But the survival of Xylos, his homeworld, his people, depended on this. The legends of the Aura Solaris, a unique energy said to emanate from this unremarkable yellow star, were their last hope. Generations of Xylosian scientists had deciphered fragmented ancient texts, pointing to this forgotten corner of the Pao galaxy. His second-in-command, Sub-Praetor Lix, shimmered beside him. "Praetor, the ancient archives. They mentioned a standing warning regarding this system. Let the sleepers lie undisturbed. It was attributed to the old ones." Roken made a dismissive gesture with a 3-fingered hand. "Superstition? Lix. The old ones vanished millennia ago. Their warnings are dust. Our people are dying now." The concilium agreed. The potential gain outweighs any archaic myth. If this Aura Solaris can rejuvenate our world's core, no dusty proclamation will stand in our way. Yet a sliver of unease remained. The warnings, though ancient, were unusually stark, but desperation was a powerful solvent for doubt. Back. On Earth, Kaelen Voss watched in stunned silence as the global alert network lit up. His initial isolated detection was now a worldwide crisis. Government scrambled, military networks buzzed, and the first shaky images from deep space telescopes began to resolve the impossible. A craft of colossal proportions, easily kilometers long, its design utterly alien, was gracefully, inexorably approaching. The Etheria Array's sensors, now fully focused, tracked the intruder as it crossed the orbit of Jupiter. It was real. It was here. On the Void Chaser, a proximity alert chimed. "Praetor," the tactical officer announced, "we are entering the periphery of their local sensor net. Expect detection. Rokan nodded, his gaze fixed on the distant, pale blue dot. That was Earth. Maintain course, we came for answers, and we will have them. The silence of space, long considered Earth's greatest shield, had just been shattered. The uninvited knock was about to become a full-blown intrusion, and humanity, blissfully unaware of any ancient rules or cosmic stakes, was about to receive visitors they were horrifyingly unprepared for. The universe had its rules, but the Xylosians, driven by a need that eclipsed caution, had just broken the most significant one of all. The consequences were yet to unfold, but the first tremor of an awakening galaxy was already being felt on a small, unsuspecting planet called Earth. The world didn't so much wake up to the news as it was violently shaken from its slumber. Kaelen Voss's verified alert, initially confined to secure channels, had cascaded outwards with the terrifying speed of undeniable truth. By the time the Void Chaser was cruising past Mars, news networks were in a frenzy, broadcasting grainy, enhanced telescopic images of the alien vessel. Panic, that old human reflex, bloomed across the globe, a chaotic chorus of fear, disbelief, and morbid fascination. Stock markets plummeted, emergency services were overwhelmed, and every house of worship saw congregations not seen in decades. In orbit, the newly commissioned Earth Defense Fleet EDF command hub, callsign Aegis Prime, was a hive of controlled chaos. Commander Lyra Nova, her dark hair pulled back in a severe knot, stood on the command deck, her face illuminated by the holographic display showing the Xylosian ship's relentless advance. Her jaw was set, her blue eyes sharp and focused, betraying none of the apprehension that gnawed at her gut. The EDF was a fledgling force, its primary experience consisting of simulated war games and managing increasingly congested orbital traffic. They were asteroid interceptors and satellite guardians, not alien repellers. All wings report status. Lyra's voice was calm, cutting through the tense murmurs of the bridge crew. She needed them steady. She needed to be steady. Reports trickled in. Her small flotilla of patrol cutters and interceptors, the Stingray, the Shield, the Javelin, and a half-dozen smaller craft, were armed and moving to designated intercept vectors. Armed was a generous term. Their particle cannons and kinetic impactors were designed for rogue space rocks, not kilometers-long unknowns. "Ma'am," her comms officer, a young lieutenant named John Lee, announced, his voice tight, "We're receiving a massive energy surge from the alien vessel. Broad spectrum. It doesn't match any weapon profile in our database." On the main view screen, the distant shape of the Void Chaser seemed to shimmer. Then, a wave of invisible force washed over the inner solar system. It wasn't an explosion, not a beam, but a powerful, pervasive pulse. Down on Earth, a cascade of failures began. Satellites winked out, communication networks stuttered, and power grids flickered. It was a sophisticated, overwhelming disruption. Aboard the Void Chaser, Praetor Rokan observed the effects of their greeting. "Standard galactic introduction. Protocol complete, Praetor," the communications officer reported. "Their primitive networks should now be aware of our peaceful intent and our request for parley." To the Xylosians, this was a polite, if firm, knock on the door, a way to announce their presence to any species capable of interstellar communication, gently disabling immediate threats and signaling a desire to talk. They didn't account for a species that interpreted any unauthorized system-wide energy blast as an act of aggression. On Aegis Prime, red lights flashed. "Multiple satellite failures. Comms are patchy. Global network is degraded," Jean shouted. "That wasn't a greeting, Commander. That was an EMP, a damn big one." Lyra's mind raced. They were outmatched, out-teched, and seemingly already under attack. Standard protocol for an unknown hostile was clear. Establish a defensive perimeter, attempt to hail, and if fired upon, return fire to the best of their ability. "Open a channel," Lyra commanded. "All frequencies. Standard first contact message. Identify ourselves, demand they state their intentions, and someone get me a damage report from Luna and Mars colonies, now." The message, translated into basic mathematical sequences and universal constants, was beamed towards the Void Chaser. Praetor Roken frowned at the incoming signal. They are responding, Praetor. It's rudimentary, almost aggressive in its simplicity. They demand our intentions. Sub-Praetor Lix shifted uneasily. Perhaps their societal structures are more direct, Praetor, less nuanced than established galactic civilizations. Rokan's patience, already strained by the urgency of his mission, began to fray. These primitives were being obtuse. He needed information about the Aura Solaris, and he needed it now. Their initial scan from the system's edge had been inconclusive, blanketed by the system's high electromagnetic noise. Their defiance is unexpected, Roken mused, a dangerous edge to his clicks. Perhaps a demonstration of our capabilities is in order, something to encourage their cooperation. He gestured to the tactical display, the small human outpost on the fourth planet. No significant life signs, mostly automated, a gentle nudge. The Void Chaser shifted, a massive weapon array subtly reorienting. From its underside, a focused beam of tractor energy lanced out, not with destructive force but with immense irresistible pulling power. It locked onto the largest structure of the Ares 6th research outpost on Mars, a domed habitat module. Slowly, inexorably, the dome was ripped from its foundations, lifted a few hundred meters into the thin Martian air, then gently, almost mockingly set back down a kilometer away, askew and clearly disabled. The message was unambiguous. We can touch you. We can take what we want. On Aegis Prime, the live feed from Mars blinked, then stabilized, showing the displaced dome amidst a cloud of red dust. The bridge was silent, the air thick with disbelief and a rising tide of anger. They just vandalized Ares 6, Jian whispered, his voice a mixture of shock and outrage. Like swatting a fly. Lyra stared at the image, her knuckles white where she gripped the railing. Misunderstanding or malice, it no longer mattered. The Xylosians had crossed a line. They hadn't just shattered the silence of space. They had shattered humanity's naive sense of security. They want to talk, Lyra said, her voice dangerously quiet. Fine. Let's show them how humans respond when you knock over our sandcastles. She turned to her tactical officer. Prepare for engagement. Operation Ant Hill is a go. Let's see how they like it when the little things start to bite back. The shattered silence was about to be filled with the roar of human defiance. Dr. Kaelen Voss found himself in a hastily repurposed conference room deep beneath Geneva, now a buzzing nerve center for Earth's scientific and strategic response. The initial shock of the Void Chaser's arrival had morphed into a frantic race for understanding. His earlier detection had made him an unwilling expert, and he now sat at a table with grim-faced generals, bewildered politicians, and the best scientific minds Earth could muster, all looking at him as if he held some cosmic Rosetta Stone. Their energy pulse was a system-wide diagnostic, incredibly advanced but likely not intended as a direct attack on infrastructure, Kaelen explained, pointing at complex energy graphs on the main screen. More like shouting in a crowded room to get everyone's attention. And the Martian outpost? The tractor beam was precise, almost surgical. They could have obliterated it. They chose not to. A skeptical air marshal grunted. Seems like splitting hairs, Doctor. They're here uninvited and they're flexing their muscles. Perhaps, Kaelen conceded, but their actions speak of a specific goal, not wanton destruction. We've been trying to decode the fragments of their initial broadcast, the one they sent before the greeting pulse. The linguistic AI is struggling, but there are recurring phonetic clusters. Aura Solaris. It sounds almost mythical, doesn't it? They're looking for something. He paused, then added thoughtfully, and their subsequent actions suggest increasing impatience, even desperation. On the Void Chaser, that desperation was manifesting as frustration in Praetor Roken. The primitives were not behaving as predicted. Their response to the Martian demonstration was not supplication, but an infuriating flurry of activity. Sub-Praetor Lix monitored the incoming sensor data, his usually smooth brow ridges furrowed. Praetor, the smaller human vessels are not retreating. They are scattering, moving into high-density orbital debris fields near their primary planet. Debris fields? Roken clicked in annoyance. Why would they hide in their own refuse? Are they truly that disorganized? A junior tactical officer, his voice hesitant, spoke up. Sir, their comms traffic has exploded. Encrypted, unencrypted, a chaotic blend. We're picking up civilian broadcasts, military channels, even entertainment signals, all spiking. Our analytical systems are struggling to filter relevant intelligence from the sheer volume of noise. He swallowed. And some of the older crew members, those who remember the deep archive warnings, they speak of the sleepers, being unpredictable, their strength not in order but in their sheer untamed proliferation. Roken silenced him with a sharp gesture, but the officer's words hung in the air. The unease was palpable. These humans were not following the script. Commander Lyra Nova aboard Aegis Prime watched the tactical plot with grim satisfaction. Operation Ant Hill is in full effect, she announced to her bridge crew, a hint of steel in her voice. They think we're just bugs. Let's show them what happens when you kick the nest. Her strategy was born of necessity. The EDF couldn't match the Void Chaser in a direct confrontation. Its shields were too strong, its weapons too powerful. But Earth orbit was their territory. Decades of launches, defunct satellites, spent rocket stages and accidental collisions had created a vast, treacherous maze of high-velocity junk. Stingray report, Lyra ordered. Ma'am, came the crackling reply from the Stingray's captain. We're deep in the graveyard belt. Their primary targeting systems seem confused. Too many ghost signatures. We're getting intermittent locks, but they're not firing. Good. Keep them guessing. Shield, status on the decoy drones? Drones deployed, Commander. Emitting. Replicated EDF signatures, they're chasing shadows. Lyra allowed herself a tight smile. The Xylosians, used to clear-cut space engagements, were struggling with the sheer clutter and the unorthodox tactics. Her ships, smaller and more agile, darted through the debris, using larger chunks for cover, appearing and disappearing like phantoms. It wasn't a battle. It was a harassment campaign, designed to delay, to gather intelligence on Xylosian capabilities, and most importantly, to show them that humanity was not a passive target. The noise the Xylosian tactical officer had reported was also part of the plan. Civilian hackers, government agencies, even amateur radio enthusiasts, encouraged by a desperate global directive, were flooding all known frequencies with everything imaginable. Scientific data, rock music, coded messages disguised as spam, literary classics, live news reports of the invasion itself. A cacophony designed to overwhelm, confuse, and subtly probe the Xylosian network for weaknesses. It was chaotic. It was messy. It was undeniably human. Aboard the Void Chaser, Roken watched a magnified view of a human interceptor, no bigger than one of his ship's landing craft, execute a daringly close pass by an asteroid fragment, evading a targeting lock by milliseconds. The pilot's skill, or perhaps recklessness, was undeniable. They fight like frenzied insects, he muttered, though a new, unwelcome note of respect had crept into his tone. Numerous, erratic, and surprisingly persistent, his ship was a predator, a sleek, powerful hunter, but it was trying to catch a swarm of angry hornets in a dense forest, all while being deafened by 1,000 simultaneous shouts. The initial Xylosian assessment of humanity as primitive and easily cowed was beginning to look like a catastrophic miscalculation. The anthill was not just stirring. It was actively, intelligently, and furiously fighting back with everything it had, and the Xylosians were starting to feel the stings. Days blurred into a continuous cycle of adrenaline and caffeine for Kaelen Voss and his team. The Xylosians, visibly irritated by humanity's tenacious and unorthodox defense, had settled into a standoffish orbit, their massive ship a constant menacing star in Earth's sky. Commander Nova's anthill strategy had bought time, a precious commodity now being used to decipher the alien puzzle. The term aura solaris, it's not appearing in any known scientific lexicon, historical or contemporary, across any language, reported Dr. Lena Hansen, a brilliant xenolinguist who had been flown in from Oxford. She looked exhausted but exhilarated. But the phonetic components, when cross-referenced with Proto-Indo-European roots and then mapped against common mythological archetypes, Kaelen leaned forward, intrigued. Go on, Lena. It's a long shot, a very long shot, she cautioned. But if we assume Solaris refers to Sol, our sun, or by extension our system, then aura, it doesn't translate directly as an energy field in most ancient terrestrial contexts. It's more an emanation, a spirit, a vital essence or inherent quality. She paused, tapping her stylus on a datapad. Think of mana, prana, elan vital, concepts describing an intangible life force, a spark. A silence fell over the room. The implications were staggering. So, they're not looking for a new type of fusion or some exotic particle? General Ramirez, the military liaison, asked, his skepticism warring with a dawning sense of wonder. Kaelen's mind raced, connecting Lena's theory with the Xylosians' behavior. Their initial scans, their focus on a source, their increasing frustration at not finding a tangible energy reading. What if, Kaelen mused aloud, what if the aura solaris they're seeking isn't a physical resource at all? What if it's an ancient, garbled alien interpretation of us, our potential, our adaptability, our creativity, our sheer, stubborn refusal to lie down and die? The idea was so audacious, so profoundly human-centric, it felt almost arrogant. Yet, it fit the bizarre circumstances. The Xylosians, from an older, perhaps more jaded or homogeneous civilization, might have ancient legends of species like humanity, young, chaotic, bursting with an unpredictable vitality they themselves had lost or never possessed. A spirit of soul that was less about physics and more about, well, spirit. Aboard the Void Chaser, Praetor Roken was nearing his breaking point. The insects were proving impossible to swat. Their continuous chaotic broadcasts were a constant irritant, their small ships darting in and out of sensor range, forcing his crew into a state of perpetual, exhausting vigilance. The search for the Aura Solaris had yielded nothing but faint, confusing energy traces that led nowhere. His homeworld was dying, and he was chasing ghosts in a system defended by primitives who fought with the baffling tenacity of creatures defending their last inch of ground. Enough of this. This waiting. Rokan's voice echoed across his bridge, sharper and more resonant than usual. Their small ships are a nuisance, but they cannot stop us. If the Aura Solaris is on their planet, we will find it. Initiate a focused, deep penetration scan of the primary landmasses. Modulate the energy frequency to bypass their atmospheric interference. I want to know what they are hiding. Praetor. Sub-Praetor Lix interjected, his usual composure strained. Such a scan at that intensity, it will have significant, albeit temporary, environmental side effects. Atmospheric ionization, localized electromagnetic storms. The primitives will perceive it as a direct attack on their world. They have been given ample opportunity to cooperate, Rokan snapped, his multifaceted eyes burning. My patience is exhausted. Proceed. The order given, the Void Chaser reoriented. A low thrum, barely perceptible at first, began to emanate from the massive vessel. Then, beams of intense, focused energy, invisible to the naked eye, but carrying immense power, began to sweep across Earth's continents. The effects were immediate and terrifying. In regions under the scan, the sky rippled with unnatural auroras. Communications blacked out completely. Strange, localized storms erupted, sudden downpours, violent gusts of wind, and an unsettling chorus of electrical crackles that made hair stand on end. Animals panicked. People, already on edge, felt a primal fear grip them as the very air around them seemed to thrum with alien power. It wasn't overtly destructive in a way that leveled cities, but it was a profound violation, a deeply unsettling display of the Xylosians' ability to touch the planet itself. Yet, if Roken had hoped to cow humanity into submission, he had once again fundamentally misjudged them. The images of the sky ripples, the reports of the sudden, bizarre weather, the shared experience of that alien touch, it didn't break them. It did the opposite. The petty squabbles, the nationalistic posturing, the background hum of human disunity that had persisted even in the face of alien arrival seemed to evaporate. From Melbourne to Mumbai, from Cairo to Chicago, a sense of shared outrage, of collective defiance, surged through the human population. This wasn't just an attack on satellites or a distant Martian outpost. This was an attack on their home, their Earth. Kaelen Voss watched the global sentiment shift on the countless news feeds displaying in the command center. Protests outside, embassies transformed into vigils of solidarity. Rival nations began sharing resources and intelligence with an openness never seen before. The noise that humanity was broadcasting towards the Xylosians changed in tone. Less chaotic, more focused. The songs became anthems. The messages became declarations. The Xylosians, in their arrogant attempt to intimidate, had inadvertently forged a weapon more potent than any they could have conceived. A truly united humanity. The whispers of old Earth, of its myths and its spirit, were no longer just a linguistic theory for Kaelen's team. They were becoming a roar. The Xylosian deep scan continued for several more rotations, its invisible energies systematically mapping Earth's surface. Praetor Rokan, despite the unsettling unity displayed by the primitives below, remained fixated on finding a tangible source for the aura solaris. He had to believe it was something physical, something quantifiable, something he could take. The alternative, that his entire expedition, the last hope of his species, was based on a misunderstanding of a metaphorical concept, was too dire to contemplate. His tactical officers, however, were growing increasingly agitated. The noise from Earth had indeed become more focused, less random. Encrypted data streams, far more complex than previously detected, were now being aimed directly at the Void Chaser. They weren't attacks, not yet, but probes, intelligent, adaptive, and unnervingly persistent. The primitives were learning fast. It was during a scan pass over a particularly desolate region of Earth, the vast empty quarter of the Arabian Peninsula, that it happened. As the Xylosian energy beam swept across the sands, something responded, not from Earth's surface but from deeper, far deeper within the planet's crust. An automated system, dormant for untold millennia, flickered to life. Aboard the Void, chaser alarms blared shrill and unexpected. Praetor, unknown energy surge originating from the planet's lithosphere. A sensor technician cried out, his voice cracking. It's not human technology. It's ancient, incredibly ancient. Before Rokan could demand further explanation, the main view screen, all bridge displays, even the personal datapads of the crew, went black. Then, a single complex symbol materialized on every screen. A swirling, intricate glyph that resonated with a power that made the Xylosians' advanced technology feel like children's toys. A voice, impossibly old yet clear and utterly devoid of emotion, filled the bridge. It spoke not in Xylosian nor in any human tongue, but in a primal mathematical language that resonated directly in their minds, bypassing auditory senses entirely. Cease your interference. Praetor Rokan felt a chill pierce through his desperation, a cold dread he hadn't experienced since his earliest larval stage. His crew was frozen, their multifaceted eyes wide with a primal fear. You were warned, the mental voice continued, patient as a dying star. The agreement was clear. The sleepers of Sol were not to be disturbed. Their designated isolation was paramount. Who are you? Rokan managed. His own voice a barely perceptible series of clicks directed at the empty air, yet he knew he was being heard. The swirling glyph on the screens pulsed faintly. We are the chroniclers. We observe. We record. We remember the covenants that shaped the star lanes before your species first harnessed fire. A wave of disquiet washed over the Xylosian bridge. The chroniclers were more than legend. They were the galaxy's living memory, rarely intervening, their very existence a testament to epochs beyond comprehension. To be directly addressed by one was an event of cataclysmic significance. The sleepers, the chronicler's mental voice echoed, were seeded with a unique potential. A chaotic variable, capable of unparalleled creation or devastating destruction. Their trajectory was deemed too unpredictable for early integration. Their awakening, unscheduled, reshapes the pattern. Roken felt a tremor of understanding, and with it a dawning horror. The aura solaris, the warnings, they weren't just superstition. They were a quarantine protocol. The rule you have broken was not merely for their protection, the chronicler imparted, the mental tone, carrying an infinitesimal hint of something that might have been ancient weariness. It was for the stability of the galactic weft. You have prodded a nascent force whose full nature is yet unrevealed, even to itself. Your search for a mythical energy source has instead risked unleashing a reality far more potent. The symbol on the screens began to fade. We do not intervene in the trajectories of lesser species unless the great compacts are violated. You have done so. Consider the consequences of your actions. The sleepers are now stirring. What they become is now part of your legacy as much as theirs. We will observe. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the glyph vanished. The ship's systems flickered back to life. The bridge of the Void Chaser was silent, save for the ragged breathing of its crew. Praetor Rokan stood motionless, the chronicler's words echoing in the deepest recesses of his mind. He had come seeking a mythical cure for his dying world. Instead, he had broken a cosmic law and awakened something the galaxy itself seemed to fear. The terrified, defiant primitives on the planet below were not just a nuisance. They were a protected, volatile experiment, and he had just thrown a meteor into their petri dish. Sub-Praetor Lix finally broke the silence, his voice hushed. Praetor, what have we done? Rokan had no answer. The desperation that had driven him was now overshadowed by a far greater, far more profound dread. The universe had one rule, and they had shattered it. Now they, and perhaps the entire galaxy, would face the repercussions. The aftermath of the chronicler's intervention aboard the Void Chaser was a palpable pall of confusion and fear. Praetor Rokan had withdrawn to his personal chambers, leaving Sub-Praetor Lix to manage a crew on the verge of mutiny. The deep scans of Earth had ceased abruptly. The massive Xylosian ship still hung in orbit, a silent, brooding menace, but its aggressive probing had stopped. It was now waiting, watching. On Earth, this sudden cessation of hostility was met with cautious optimism and intense analysis. They just stopped, General Ramirez noted in the Geneva Command Center, pointing at the flatlining energy readings from the Void Chaser. Mid-scan. Why? We don't know for sure, Dr. Kaelen Voss admitted, though his mind was racing with possibilities sparked by Lena Hansen's theory about the aura solaris. But whatever happened, their operational pattern has changed. They seem hesitant, uncertain. This might be our window. Commander Lyra Nova, patched in from Aegis Prime, listened intently. Kaelen's theory about the aura solaris being a misinterpretation of human potential, of their spirit, had initially sounded like something from a philosophical treatise, not a military briefing. But the Xylosians' bizarre behavior, their relentless search for something intangible, and now this sudden pause, it started to fit. If they were looking for a spark, maybe it was time humanity showed them one. Commander, Kaelen said, his voice gaining conviction. If they're confused, if they're questioning their mission, perhaps we can encourage that confusion. Lyra's eyes lit up with a daring idea. Her anthill tactics had been about survival, about being a nuisance. Now, with the enemy seemingly off balance, it was time to go on the offensive, not with weapons, but with the very essence the Xylosians seemed to misunderstand. All right, team, Lyra announced to her bridge crew and the coordinating council. In Geneva, a mischievous glint in her eye that hadn't been seen in days. New plan. Operation Cognitive Dissonance. If they're looking for the human spark, let's give them a fireworks display they'll never forget. The directive that went out globally was unprecedented. It wasn't a call to arms, but a call to expression. Every nation, every organization, every individual with access to a broadcasting unit was tasked with a new mission. Show the aliens what it meant to be human. Not the fear, not the anger, but the totality of it. Within hours, the noise that had been harassing the Xylosians transformed. It became a curated deluge, symphonies by Beethoven and Bach, jazz improvisations from New Orleans, throbbing electronic dance music from Berlin, soulful folk songs from every continent, Shakespearean soliloquies, poetry slams, stand-up comedy routines, lectures on quantum, physics, philosophical debates on the nature of consciousness, children's cartoons, the raw, unfiltered feed of the internet's most viral cat videos and ridiculous memes. Entire film libraries were uplinked. Art galleries digitized their collections and broadcast them as image streams. It was an avalanche of human creativity, passion, intellect, folly, and sheer bewildering variety. Aboard the Void Chaser, the effect was profound. The Xylosian analysts, already struggling with human unpredictability, were now confronted with a data stream that defied every logical framework they possessed. Prater, a communications officer, reported to a still secluded Roken via intercom, his voice strained. The primitives, they have altered their transmissions. I don't know what it is. Music, images, illogical narratives, emotional outpourings. It's an assault of unstructured, chaotic information. Simultaneously, Kaelen, Voss and his team put their part of Lyra's plan into action. Having analyzed the energy signatures of the Xylosians' deep scans, they had a rudimentary understanding of what the alien sensors were attuned to when searching for the aura solaris. It was a complex blend of biosignatures, specific electromagnetic frequencies, and subtle quantum fluctuations they seemed to associate with life force. Okay, Kaelen instructed his team. We can't replicate a soul, but we can give their sensors something to chase. We're going to project false positives, concentrate the signals in uninhabited areas, deep ocean trenches, the Antarctic interior, remote Siberian wilderness. Make them think the aura solaris is tantalizingly close, but always just out of reach. Let's send them on the wildest goose chase this solar system has ever seen. Specialized transmitters, originally designed for deep Earth penetration, radar and atmospheric research were repurposed. Carefully crafted energy signals mimicking the Xylosians' target parameters began to emanate from disparate, desolate points across the globe. On the Void Chaser, new hope flickered briefly, only to be repeatedly doused. Prater, strong aura signature detected in Sector Gamma 7 terrestrial ocean. Minutes later, belay that Prater signature faded, appears to be anomalous geothermal activity. Then, new contact, high energy Sector Rho 4 polar ice cap, followed by Prater, the signature is unmoving erratically, and now it's gone. Possibly a localized magnetic distortion. Prater Roken finally emerged onto his bridge, his eyes showing deep fatigue. He watched the main screen, which was attempting to categorize the human broadcast. A live stream of a rock concert from what appeared to be a city called Rio, the crowd a sea of joyous, dancing figures. He then looked at the tactical display, where his officers were tracking yet another will-o'-the-wisp energy signature in a desolate mountain range. The Xylosians were an ancient, logical species. Their culture valued order, clarity, and directness. They were utterly unprepared for a species that weaponized its own chaotic, vibrant, multifaceted soul and compounded it with deliberate, mischievous misdirection. The relentless, joyful, nonsensical, brilliant, and utterly human barrage, combined with the infuriatingly elusive energy traces, was doing more damage to Xylosian morale and operational capacity than any kinetic weapon could have achieved. The human spark, once a misunderstood legend, was now burning brightly, and it was blindingly confusing. The relentless, kaleidoscopic assault of human culture continued unabated. For days, the Void Chaser had been subjected to symphonies that stirred unnameable emotions in Xylosian minds, dramas that made them question the nature of existence, and comedies that, despite their alien context, elicited strange, involuntary facial twitches from junior officers trying to suppress bewildered amusement. Interspersed with this cultural deluge were the constant, frustrating false positives for the aura solaris, leading their best censorships on fruitless errands across the planet below, burning precious fuel and fraying nerves. Prater Roken stood, On his command bridge, a being adrift in a sea of incomprehensible data, the vibrant, chaotic energy of humanity, their aura solaris, wasn't a localized phenomenon. It was everywhere, in everything they did. It was in their defiance, their ingenuity, their art, their absurdities. It was the very essence. Kaelen Voss had theorized, the human spark that Commander Nova had so brilliantly fanned into an overwhelming conflagration. The chronicler's words echoed in his mind. Their awakening reshapes the pattern. You have prodded a nascent force. He had come seeking an energy source to save Xylos, but the energy he had found was not something that could be mined or harnessed. It was the spirit of a species, and it was clear now that trying to subdue or control it was like trying to bottle a hurricane. His crew was exhausted, demoralized. Their sophisticated analytical systems were choked with sonnets and soap operas. Their tactical displays were a mockery of false leads. Sub-Praetor Lix approached him, his movements weary. Praetor, our energy. Reserves are approaching critical levels from the continuous evasive maneuvers and the fruitless deployments. The crew, they are at their limit. We have found nothing tangible. This aura solaris, I do not believe it is what the legends described. Roken looked at Lix, then at the main view screen, which currently displayed a montage of human children from around the world, painting, laughing, learning. Their eyes, so full of unfiltered potential, seemed to stare directly at him. He had endangered his ship, his crew, and potentially violated an ancient cosmic directive, all for a misinterpretation. The weight of his folly settled upon him, heavy and cold. The legends were flawed, Roken finally admitted, his voice a low series of clicks, devoid of its former arrogance. Or perhaps we were too literal in our interpretation. He let out a long, slow exhalation, a sound akin to a sigh. This aura, it is not a power to be taken. It simply is. He turned to his helm officer. Prepare for withdrawal. Plot a course out of this system. A wave of quiet relief washed over the bridge. The sudden shift in the Void Chaser's energy signature did not go unnoticed on Earth. Commander, Jianli reported to Lyra Nova, his voice laced with disbelief. They're powering up their main drives. The trajectory, it's outbound. They're leaving. A cheer threatened to erupt on the Aegis Prime bridge, but Lyra held up a hand. She watched the massive Xylosian ship slowly, deliberately, begin to pull away from Earth. There were calls from some military factions on the ground to strike them as they retreated, a final vengeful blow. But Lyra looked at Kaelen Voss, who was observing the same data from Geneva. Their eyes met via the comms link. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Hold your fire, Lyra commanded, her voice firm. All EDF units stand down from offensive postures, let them go. But Commander, one of her tactical officers protested, after what they did? They came here out of desperation, not malice, however misguided their actions were, Lyra said, her gaze fixed on the receding alien vessel. They're beaten, not by our weapons but by us being us. There's no honor in shooting a retreating, broken enemy. Perhaps this is its own kind of victory. A victory that spoke of more than just survival, but of a dawning. Wisdom, Kaelen, listening in, felt a surge of pride. Humanity had faced its first major galactic test, not with overwhelming force, but with ingenuity, resilience, and ultimately, a surprising capacity for restraint. The Void Chaser accelerated, shrinking into the blackness of space until it was just another distant star, then gone. In the days and weeks that followed, Earth was a planet transformed. The shared experience had forged an unprecedented global unity. The knowledge that they were not alone, that ancient, powerful forces existed in the galaxy, and that humanity itself was considered a cosmic wildcard, had irrevocably altered their perspective. The aura solaris became a shorthand for human potential, a rallying cry for a species that had stared into the abyss and found, to its own surprise, an incredible strength within itself. The final scene, months later. Kaelen Voss and Lyra Nova stood before a new, vastly expanded holographic display in the rebuilt Etheria array, now a joint scientific defense installation. It no longer showed just their solar system. It showed a sprawling map of the Milky Way galaxy, dotted with newly identified energy signatures, potential points of interest, and unsettlingly, regions marked with the chronicler's symbol. "There, out there, Kaelen," Lyra said quietly, her uniform crisp, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "The Xylosians, the chroniclers, who knows what else. And we're here," Kaelen replied, a faint smile on his face. He gestured to the vibrant, swirling galaxy before them. "The rule about not waking the humans is broken. The sleepers are awake. The universe has a new variable to contend with." There was a sense of immense possibility in the air, a touch of trepidation for the unknown challenges ahead, but overlying it all was a quiet confidence. Humanity had found its voice in the galactic chorus, not by becoming like the others, but by embracing the very things that made them unique. It was a new dawn, not just for Earth, but for an old galaxy that was about to learn a lot more about the unpredictable, chaotic, and utterly remarkable species called human.